Amadnagar is in a very sort of rural area. And it's sort of like, where we live is like half Hindu and half Muslim, basically. And Amadnagar city is 150,000 people. And then to the south, by 7 miles, you have Baba's tomb. And then to the north, by about 9 miles, you have Baba's ashram, where his close disciples and his mandali live. And so where I work is the trust office, which is in the town of Amadnagar itself. It's a little compound that was built in 1921. And there's rooms there on one side where people live, like me and Craig. Jack has a room there. And then on the other side is the trust office where the trustees come. And also there's a registration office there where the pilgrims that come, they have to register. It's a formality that they have to go through. So it's sort of situated in the town. And so in the morning you hear these Muslim calls. So you get up. And then you have your breakfast, which is pretty simple fare. It's like bakri, which is like a chapati or tortilla. It's a wheat tortilla, basically. And then you get your milk, and you boil your milk. And it's not even pasteurized or anything, obviously. You just boil your milk. Okay. Then the mandali come around 10 o'clock after you have breakfast. And it's a pretty slow day, basically. But breakfast I make, and lunch is reheated dinner. We have a cook that comes at night, so we put leftovers for lunch. Food is a major problem there, really a major problem. For me, anyway. And Craig, me and Craig. But if you're at the Pilgrim Center, of course, it's a lot easier. Most pilgrims, there's a Pilgrim Center in Meherabad itself, which takes care of all your needs, which is just great. I mean, it's so nice. But you can't have that in the trust office. So then the trustees come at 10 Monday through Thursday. And they're Mani, she's Baba's sister, and Eric, of course, and Balnatu and Rano. And Bahul Kalchuri, he used to live in Meherazad, but because he's such an administrator, he sort of migrated to the trust office. And then after Adi died in 1980, then Bao sort of just stayed there as the mandali. He took care of the main administrative side there and sort of oversaw the Westerners living there. So Bao lives there 24 hours a day. And so the day begins, for me it would begin like about 9 o'clock. Bao would ring the bell. We have a little bell system there. And I'd go running over to his room, and he might have some dictation for me or something like that. And then, or, he might have just a question or two about anything. Who knows? Get something out of the office, I'll just file that file. Then the mandali come in the trust car at 10 o'clock. And when I first got there, I'll tell you an interesting story. When I first got there, 2.5 years ago, one of the first things that Mani told me was, when we come from Meherazad in the trust car, I want you to greet us in the morning. It was a suggestion, but something that I should have taken more seriously than I did. So after this first day, we say goodbye, and the next morning, at 10 o'clock, I knew they were coming, and I remembered exactly what Mani said, be there when they get there to greet them. Well, I was busy typing some letter to somebody. Kathleen, I think it was. No, I'm just kidding. I'll blame it on Kathleen. She's a convenient scapegoat. No. So I was typing a letter. You know how it is. You don't want to be disturbed in the middle of some really profound thing, you're trying to get it out. So they come. I saw the car drive up because I couldn't see the other side of the compound. And I remembered, I'm supposed to be over there right now. It's 10 o'clock. Gosh, I better run over there. Well, let me just finish this one paragraph, in the middle of this paragraph. So I waited. I got over there, and they always garland Baba's picture in the morning. And they say, Jai Baba, to start the day. Well, I got there after they'd done that. Mani looks at me, and the first thing she said was, why weren't you here? When I told you yesterday explicitly to come and greet us in the morning. I felt about like that, First little suggestion, and I blow it, So then, from then on, I always try to make it on time. And I messed up once again after about 2 years, and she caught me on it. She said, I told you to be there on time. So Mani is not one to forget. So, and it's not like an order, but it's just like a practice in being punctual. As Baba would train them like this, to be punctual, be there on time, And it's really something, that everybody's, especially in India, God, you think it's bad in the West, people being late. In India, they're late, like about an hour sometimes, which is very frustrating to everybody. So then the mandali come and greet the mandali, greet Mani and Eric. And I don't work on that side. Because when I first came there, my original portfolio, if you want to call it like that, was I was going to be Adi's typist. Well, it turned out that Adi died in March, and I came in August of 1980. So, like, there really wasn't any particular spot for me to work on the trust office side because Craig and Peter and Heather and those three were there. They really didn't need an extra hand over there. So I stayed on Jack Small's side. Basically, I started typing for Jack. And after a while, of course, you might say I got promotion. I got a promotion. I started typing for Bao. And I would do Jack's stuff that had to do with the trust, which is fair. No, I got a cut. Because Jack was paying me. Actually, talking about raises is completely voluntary. The only thing you get there free is when you get a roof over your head.
Yeah, describe the room though, John.
Well, it's a pretty high ceiling, a lot of cobwebs on it. It's about 20 feet high ceiling because it's so hot there. And like I said, it was built in 1920, and the walls are like 2 feet thick of mud. And their wall, it's whitewashed over. And it's pretty simple. Sure. The trust was set up by Baba while he was still alive to carry out certain projects. Like they're supposed to build a hospital, which is underway now. And they're supposed to provide for lodging for pilgrims. And of course, they're supposed to take care of the tomb and the surrounding area and make sure that there's a quiet zone there. So they're planting trees there to ensure that there's a quiet area around the tomb. And there's a master plan that they've set up based on Baba's trust itself, the trust deed, which Baba set up. And it also provides for certain beneficiaries, like the Mandali. They get Mandali means circle member, like just apostle, like St. Peter, St. Paul. No, not St. Paul, St. John. St. Paul comes later. The Mani and basically his close disciples, to the Mera, Mani. Gosh, I don't know, about 12. I couldn't tell you offhand, but maybe 12, 15.
They never had any other occupation other than being with Baba.
How many are there right now? They're getting pretty old, like they're in their 70s, most of them are. Bao was the youngest, I think he's 56 or something like that. So Bao, he runs, he administrates the trust, that's his job, and basically, he was a lawyer, he was trained as a lawyer. Erich tells most of the Baba stories in Mandalay Hall. He's a fund of stories. And Mani, of course, she's also a great storyteller, and Baba's sister, and Rano's still there. And she's the only Westerner who's permanent there. There used to be other than Dr. Donkin was from England. Rano's from New York. And they live a life of selfless service towards Baba. They don't have. If they have families, they're not living with their lives anymore.
John would be considered, when he's living there, your present thing. No, he's living there and he's just devoting his life to the work, and he has to do the rules that they're pretty explicit about.
But you can get married if you want, like a resident, for example, a Westerner who goes over there. They have what they call a spiritual training program, which is set up under the trust. Yeah. And it's basically designed just so that you have a job there, right? Whatever it may be. Fitting pipes or typing or answering correspondence or working in the dispensary. But that's just so the Baba can work on you, basically.
Well, I guess my basic question is, you're not allowed to establish a religion?
No.
Or do you want to keep all the religion? Reading courses, yeah, you want to take all the religion.
Exactly.
So he didn't want to establish.
No. This is not like a new religion. Like if you're a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim or whatever, he would want you to practice that religion the way you should practice it, according to the essence of that religion. No. Of course, it'll turn out that way, but he doesn't want it to. But it naturally, the way things evolve, the priests take over and they make it into a religion. But there's no outward, so you can't find God outwardly. You can only find Him through your heart. So if you practice any religion, and if you're indifferent to the rituals, then you'll find God. But if you just stick with the rituals, you're not going to make any headways. It's all right for those people who need it. I mean, it's like there's a certain stage where people are at where they need the rituals and they need the outward attachment, you know. So I mean, that has to be there, you know. I mean, people just they start off at that point.
Maybe to get a little more lightness. I mean, the present surviving disciples of Baba, like family left over from his original group. And so when we go there, it's just like visiting the people that were around Baba. They're not really, they don't have any kind of status or order. I mean, they're just very sensible business people because they know a lot of people come in here. So they have to attend to them in a business-like fashion. But there's tremendous amount of informality after you go through the formalities. Then you get to know them closely.
Baba's not like somebody going through big raising money.
No, absolutely not.
Like that.
No, because where love is concerned, you know, you don't ask for money. If donations come to the trust, that's out of love. That makes the disciples happy. But they don't go around asking for money. They don't have fundraising. I mean, if we want to do that for our own, I mean, that's okay. But as far as they're concerned, the only donations that they really want are those which come out of love, and they're not into making a lot of money. All they care about is that you love Baba, and that you just hold on to his Dhamma. Or if you're a Christian, you know, they'd be happy if you just love Jesus more.
Do you think about their style of living or standard of living, or they have a lot of possessions?
No, they don't have a lot of possessions. They basically just live the same way that they did when they were with Baba, which is a real simple existence. I mean,
What would they do with money anyway?
Yeah, the little leftover money they have. See, the little leftover money they have, they run a clinic with it, Trish. And even that clinic is so. I mean, for example, you go to the store and you just buy these swabs, and these Johnson & Johnson swabs which come in a package. There they take these little matches, which are hard wooden stick matches, and they put cotton swabs on those to save money. And so, I mean, it's just that's how Baba taught them. That's how they're going to continue. They're going to try to economize with whatever they can, even though they get tons of donations. And by the way, keep sending all medical supplies you can. That doesn't mean that they don't need them. I mean, they desperately need medical supplies there in India because there's so many poor people. And the trust provides the free clinic, and the Meherazad. See, Meherazad has their own little clinic, and Meherabad also has their own little clinic. So it's all selfless, Trish. I mean, you'll be so touched by it, you know. And it's like their kind of selflessness is it's based on just service to Baba, and Baba's not in the body anymore. But still, they have such faith. Like Bao, for example, you know. He'll have some problems, you know, which are just so utterly complicated in India because of the laws and everything. And yet, you know, he'll just, like me and Jack, you know, Jack's a lawyer who's living over there now. He's about our age. And he'll say to Bao, you know, Bao, how's this ever going to work out, you know? And Bao will just say, well, you know, I have faith in my Lord. It'll work out. Of course, you know, he does a lot of Bao himself does a lot of the work, you know. But, you know, like let's say he reaches the end, he can't do anymore, and you know, it's in the hand of the officials now. Or is the trust going to get for example, is it going to get the exemption that they need or not, you know? And he'll say, it's in the hand of our Lord, and our Lord is great. So they still have that faith in Baba, that even though he's not here, that if they have surrendered to him, he will see to it that things will work out according, you know, to his plan, to his wish. Not our wish, of course. I mean, we don't get what we want. But he still has his connection is still with those who love him. It's like a telephone connection. Even though you don't see the person on the other end of the phone, you can still communicate with them. And Baba has come on earth to lay the cables with everybody that, you know, to all his to those who love him. And we can get in touch with God, Baba, through just as simply as you can dial a phone and call somebody on the other end. Just the same way, you can just inwardly, in your own heart, you can feel, you can get in touch with your higher self, which is, some people call it intuition. I mean, even though we're all totally gross conscious, still, you know, there's that little spark, that little something there that Baba has planted in everybody's heart, which gives you a feeling, well, there must be something more to life than meets the eye, you know. And that little spark, that little flame, they call it the flame of love, you know, or the seed of intuition or something, you know. There's different words for the same thing. And that center in your heart is what you get in touch with when we communicate or relate or whatever word is with God. So anyway, they have this tremendous faith in Baba, which is just which is inspiring. There's no two ways about it. But yet at the same time, they're very practical, the Mandali. For example, Erich would say, where the trust is concerned, be very alert. So if you see, the trust is a big estate of about 120 acres. And it's not fenced in, so cows come in there, wandering in, and, villagers wander in there. And so he gave the example. He said, say you're working on a pipeline. You're a plumber or something like that, and you're working on a pipeline. You just don't think that tightening the pipe is the main thing that you've got to do. If you see somebody walk by, you stop them and say, what is your business here? Who are you? Where are you going? Like that. You just don't ignore them. So like real practical, and they see the details, and it's like for example, if you go to one of the Mandali for something and ask them to borrow something, they'll say, sure, you can borrow it, And if you don't bring it back, they always say complete the circle. If you don't bring it back to them right away, they'll say, hey, do you still have that, or something like that. And it's like they always, or whatever it is, any problem that you go to them, and if there's a tail end that's not connected on it, they always want you to complete the circle. So they're really attentive to details, and I don't know, what else? No? We're just volunteers. Well, there's what you could call spiritual education, in the sense that Erich gives talks in Mandali Hall, where Baba would sit. Baba had a chair like this in Mandali Hall, which I really shouldn't be sitting in, actually. And Erich just tells great stories, which are like all spiritual anecdotes and stories of being with Baba. It's stories from the sutras. Well, it's an individual thing. I mean, you can read what he writes, or you don't have to read. I mean, if your inclination is towards reading, fine. If you're not interested in reading, you don't have to. There's no set program. Basically, the program, if you wanted to call it that, would be people that live in Meherabad would go to Arti, which is prayer. Arti means the prayer of love for God. And then in the morning, at 7 o'clock, everyone who wants to, most of the people that stay at the Program Center, would go up to the Baba's tomb in the morning, and they sing a song and say the prayers as an expression of love for Baba. And then there's a bus that takes anybody who wants to over to Meherazad certain days of the week, and they can hear Balnatu and Erich and Mani give talks and tell stories in Mandali Hall. And then every Wednesday, Bal Kulturi comes to the Pilgrim Center, and he gives a good talk on Baba. So the teaching is there. The teaching is there, and like Mani told a story one time, which I'll relate. She said she was giving a talk off of Meherabad, and she saw this grinding stone in the corner. You'll see it there if you ever go there. It's an old Indian type grinding stone where they grind the wheat or whatever. And she said, this reminds me of Baba. When we were with Baba, being with Baba was a grinding down of the ego. And so the Westerners who come here to live, they have to expect it. They're going to get ground down. Because Baba said the only yoga is you go and God comes. So it's a grinding, definitely. And his disciples, some of the stories Bao tells, it's a grinding process. For example, this is to give you a little taste of how Baba would interact with his disciples. In Mandali Hall one day, Baba had one disciple called Gustaji, who was an old, respected old man, and another one named Bao, who we'll see some pictures of later. And he called Bao in, he said, because Bao was more intellectual. And he got 2 degrees. before he came to Baba. And he said, Baba, I want you to write this very urgent letter. And I gave him the points. And so he said, now go quickly and write this letter. So Baba went to his room, and he started writing it. And he got like about one sentence written. And he sends for Bao. And so Bao comes in, yes, Baba? Have you written the letter yet? No, Baba. Well, in the meantime, clean up this mess here. Gustaji has just dropped some cake on the carpet, and if you don't clean it up, some ants will get it. And here, all the other Mandali were sitting in the room. Like there was 5 or 10 other the men disciples sitting in the same room with Baba. And they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there. And here he calls Bao, who's been just told to write this urgent letter. So Bao cleans it up, sweeps it away. And Baba says, now, hurry up, finish that letter. So he goes back into his room. And he starts writing the second sentence. And of course, Baba calls him again. And he says, have you written the letter yet? No, Baba, how could I? All right. Get a glass of water for Gustaji. So he goes and gets a glass of water for Gustaji. He says, Bao, you and Gustaji, you both obey me 100%. But I'm really pleased with Gustaji's obedience. But your obedience makes me unhappy. I mean, stuff like that. So he should have done it. Well, who knows how he should have done it, but anyway, that's a sample story.
So, John, why don't you explain when you tell the stories that the Muslims tell? It's mostly just remembrances of their life and lessons they learned with Baba. I mean, it's not really any esoteric.
No. It's all really basic, fundamental stuff, just obedience. They would stress obedience. Obedience to Baba, I mean, it's just basically, Baba wasn't trying to make life rough for us. I mean, he would give orders, like no drugs, no sex before you're married to the Westerners now. And those are, the Mandali are surprised that we can't even follow those. But basically they're only for our own good. It's just for our own good. Why? Because Baba knows all the complications that come from, doing stuff that he says not to do. It's not to make life difficult for us, but it's just basically for our own spiritual well-being. Yeah.
Don't the Westerners feel that a lot of inner working going on with their
Yeah, definitely. And when they're not, I'm sure everybody that comes there gets worked on inwardly a lot, because the way Bao explains it is that when you go to Baba's tomb, it's like the treasure house of all that Baba worked for. See, Baba was in seclusion a lot in the crypt where the tomb is before there was anything there, and Baba would go into the hole, and he was in silence, and he would fast there in the early years, I think it was in the 20s and 30s. And so he did a lot of work in the tomb itself. And so when a lover or anyone goes there and pays respect to Baba at his tomb, he gives something to us which enables us to get closer to God. And that is what Bao calls, and what Baba calls, Vijnana Sanskaras, or translated into English means divine free sanskaras. Now, there are natural sanskaras and there are unnatural. Sanskaras are impressions. Every moment you get millions of impressions as you look around. And as you act in your life, you just get millions and millions of impressions all the time. And these impressions, they can either be natural or unnatural. Natural ones are those which help, in a sense, to just get you towards the path in a normal, natural way. And unnatural ones keep you away from the path. So what Baba's done is to help wipe out those unnatural sanskaras so that we can live a more natural life and just get closer and get closer to God and get closer to Baba. So when you go to the tomb, you feel so much of Baba's love there that it tends to wipe out a lot of unnatural impressions. See that, Dana?
You say unnatural. We also have non-natural. human sanskars are non-natural. They are natural from evolution, and then non-natural human sanskars. So what do you mean by the unnatural?
Well, unnatural would just be the obvious ones, bad ones. When you don't feel holy, I guess. When you feel farther away from Baba, that would be unnatural. You know, I mean, the obvious examples would be like murder and rape, and you know, where you're just intensely involved in just totally sensuality, total sensuality, things like that. In other words, anything that helps you get closer to God is natural. I mean, it's just a very general, broad thing. And so anyway, what? Yeah.
Do the Mandali exert a lot of pressure on the Westerners as far as the consider that they're probably?
It's a good question.
Do you go through a lot of things?
Well,
I have another way of
yeah,
asking that.
yeah.
If they give an order, do you obey it as if Baba said, or do you ever question the Mandali way, what they say to you? What do you suggest? Why don't you answer Linda's first?
Well, basically, they don't give orders. They don't set themselves up as gurus or intermediaries or anything like that at all. I mean, they would give it. If Mani says type a letter, I mean, that's not really an order. You're just going to type it. And it's like to be honest. And, they don't have to tell you not to be dishonest and tell them, and you don't go up to a Mani and tell them a lie, If they ask you a question, unless it's, they're not going to ask you any real personal questions anyways, for starters. Unless you come to them with it, I mean, to go up to a Mandali, if they ask you a straightforward question, if you tell them a lie, I mean, for example, like that, I mean, that wouldn't be good. I mean, that would just make you feel bad. But actually, they don't give orders as such.
Well, like you were saying, on your Mani, maybe suggesting that you might be from how to get from you from the in.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson.
Yes.
Do a lot of things like that happen?
Yeah. But I'm trying to think of some other examples.
This one from down maybe.
Oh, yeah.
We've all seen John get hammered for that.
Well, for example, okay, well, this is like a responsibility that we take upon ourselves as caretakers of the compound. For example, a certain day during the week, we all get a shift at being a caretaker on the compound, and we can't leave the premises without checking with Bao, for example. We always check with Bao before we leave. That would be an example of that. And if you leave, let's say I left, which I did, without checking with him. And we have this little bell system, because otherwise he has to run across the compound all the time. So let's say he rings the bell, and I don't answer it. So I come back 15 minutes later, and he says, "Where were you?" I'll say, "Well, I just went over to the canteen for a lime Ricky," or something like that. And he'll just say, "Why didn't you ask first before you went?" Just basically training in etiquette, consideration. I mean, that's just consideration. For example, we were on the train, me and Bao, coming back from Delhi, and there was a lady and an army officer, and Bao and myself were there in this compartment, and they had bunks that come down and you hop on the bunk, and my bunk was down there, and Bao's was down there, because we both wanted to get lower berths. And it came time for us to bring our bunks down, so I pulled the bunk down, and I started throwing my sleeping bag on the bunk, on one of the lower bunks, and Bao's sleeping bag was on the other lower bunk. And Bao said, "Why don't you let this lady sleep on your bed, and why don't you sleep up there?" And I didn't even think of it. But I mean, it was just a lesson in consideration. You don't expect a lady to climb up the stairs and sleep up, in the upper berth. Just things like that, that he would think of that I wouldn't think of. Just lessons in consideration, so that's little things like that would just happen all the time. I mean, basically just lessons in politeness and what is proper, what is not proper. I mean, that was the basic training, if you want to call it that. You can ask questions. I mean, you don't have to go in there. You can write letters. You see, Baba's emphasis is mostly on the path of love. And so what he wants is for us to view God as the beloved, and to just basically love Him so much that we become good. And in other words, love motivates every action then. And so within our own lives, seeing to it that we're loving God in our own life, then that love, as Baba says, it reaches out and touches others. And so that really that is the best way, and it's the easiest way to help the world, because Baba set it up like that.
But isn't there something that you can refer to in Baba's writings about there's some direct advice on political?
Yeah, Baba said, yeah.
There's some.
No, he doesn't. No, not at all. No, love for God is a terrible thing. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to play some Qawwali songs, two by Begum Akhtar, and who was the foremost Qawwali singer in India. And in the 30s, she was very famous, and she had been invited by Baba to sing, and she refused. And then later on, she herself, of her own, in the 50s or 60s, I forget when Baba was at Guru Prasad, it must have been the 60s, she asked Baba if she could come and sing for him. And Baba said no. And of course that shook her head. But this is the play of the lover and the beloved in action. And then, finally, and after several letters, she wrote several more letters, so Baba finally said, okay, you can come. And so she came to Guru Prasad and sang the first song that's going to be on this tape, which will run in conjunction with the slideshow. That song she sang before Baba in Guru Prasad, and I was talking to Bao about it, and he said when she was singing that song, she just started weeping, and she couldn't sing it. But this is a nice tape of it that we'll be playing, so you can hear the whole song. Qawwali is a special type of poem which pits the lover and the beloved together, and there's there's a complaint relationship basically in these poems, and they're from Persian. They're derived from the Persians and the Sufis, but they're real popular nowadays in India and Pakistan, especially. So there's the type of Qawwali that you'll hear tonight. The first one is Begum Akhtar singing one. And then you'll hear Adi Kairani, who was Baba's secretary for many years. He will be translating some Qawwalis that were recorded in Hyderabad by Chris Pearson and Steve Berry back in 1979, or 77, was it? And you'll be happy to know that they're coming out with a book, Steve and Lynn. They have done a book on Adi, and it will include some Qawwalis that Adi loved most. And it will probably come out within a year. And then there'll be another Guzzle by Begum Akhtar, which is a really beautiful one. And I'll translate them all for you first. And then finally there'll be a Guzzle by Bao Kalchuri. And when Bao was doing night duty with Baba, Baba would he would say, I'm going to teach you how to do Guzzles in Hindi. Now Guzzles are normally only done in Urdu. And Bao would try, and he could never do it, And so finally Baba said, now you pay attention, and he started keeping a beat like this, You do it like this. Something like, I'm just giving an example of how you do it. And Baba said, no, I can't do it, Baba, I can't. And for like 2 or 3 hours, Baba just kept beating like the rhythm like this that he wanted Baba to do it. And Baba just said, Baba, I can't figure it out, what you're trying to do. And he gave up. All right, Baba said, okay, enough. And then the next instant, or the next, moment, suddenly, it came to Baba. He suddenly got the rhythm for doing these Guzzles. And so he just started writing Guzzles after this. And Baba was real happy. And now what Baba would do, he would give some lines for Bao to write the whole thing. Like, I think the one that you're going to hear, all but 2 lines are written by Baba. So Baba has practically written the whole Guzzle that Bao is going to read. It's in English. Bao translates. It's actually, he'll read the Hindi and then he'll translate it into English. So it's basically just Baba.